Baseball is back.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
I'm Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Dbacks podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. I am, of course, your host, GB Diamondback. Today, I've got just a normal piping hot cup of English breakfast tea, as we're going to be talking about some of the breaking news, flashes, and rumors floating around hashtag Diamondbacks on social media and across all the media channels. It's a rumor that's not been going away this off-season, and that rumor is that the Diamondbacks are going to be trading away one of their starting pitch aces in Zac Gallen, the milkman he delivers. It's something that popped up on my feed at the start of Thursday morning for me here in the UK. It was a couple of tweets where people were saying that maybe Zac Gallen would be on his way to Baltimore as one of the undisclosed suitor teams, and people wondering, was there some truth in that rumors? So they were getting on Twitter, they were getting on Instagram, they were tweeting at every notable source that they could find. Was Zac Gallen going to be departing the Diamondbacks? And, well, many have repeated that we're looking to trade away starting pitchers. It's been well documented Gallen really isn't the first candidate for that. Of course, people are saying, Jordan Montgomery's the guy who we've been aggressively shopping all the way through the off-season, through the winter meetings, everything else. There was rumor that he might be going to the Cubs in exchange for Cody Bellinger. That didn't happen. But I think we're still looking to kind of shift him off of the roster. But yeah, people tweeted, and eventually they got a reply. They got the kind of the answer, and I think it was the answer that actually quite a lot of people were looking for, from Gamby, John Gambadoro on X, formerly Twitter, and he has said that he's shutting down the links between Gallen and the suitor teams. Those suitor teams being the Mets, the Angels, and then of course most vocally the Orioles. Now, the potential trade for the Orioles that was floated was for a third baseman, a guy called Kobe Mayo, who's, one of their top prospects. He's number 14, I believe, on the MLB top 100 prospect list. But that's apparently not happening, and we're going to look at, potentially what else may be on the horizon on this episode of the Dbacks podcast. So, before we get into it, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to the supporters of the podcast, both our friends over at the Dbacks Dispatch in Arizona, the Home Run Travel Company, who are the UK's premier and only baseball travel company. So if you're looking to get out there and see some baseball for yourself, go to America, go East Coast, go West Coast. There's 2 tours running in 2025. You can see, all the Dodgers stars in Los Angeles. You can go to San Diego if you fancy soaking up some sun. You're also going to be hitting up Seattle, and then also on the East Coast, New York, Baltimore, Boston, Washington, D.C., if you fancy seeing Aaron Judge and co. hit some big home runs at Yankee Stadium, or they're going to be going across New York to go see the Mets as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to see some pretty awesome baseball. So if you're interested in, seeing some baseball in person, if maybe you've been before, maybe not, if you want to have a great sense of community, get in that group on Facebook or Twitter, on Instagram, follow at Home Run Travel, and go see some baseball for yourself and drink some beer and have some hot dogs and just generally, have a good time. With that all said and done, let's get into talking about this potential Zac Gallen trade. And we know at this point that the D-backs GM, Mike Hazen, he takes calls about everybody. That's his policy. He doesn't just see a guy ringing him up and say, oh yeah, we want blah, blah, we want Zac Gallen, and he just says no and hangs up. That's not what he does. He wouldn't be a good GM if he did that for the most part. Yes, he's looking after the team assets, but at the same time, he's actually gonna listen to what people have to say and then try and, if we're gonna have the milkman, we might as well milk him for all he's worth and get some good value back. But any call about Zac Gallen means we will be demanding something significant in return. Craig on X says that we should be getting any team's top 4 prospects with at least one major league ready prospect or player in in that package who should be Major League ready at a position we need. So Diamondbacks fans, you know that's potentially, we've been looking for a backup center fielder to play in the outfield, or especially a right-handed DH, because we're going to have probably Pavin Smith in that DH platoon, and then obviously Mike Hayes and Torey Lovullo are looking at keeping the DH spot a little more open this year, just in case of players who might need a rest who can slot in and play DH. But if the Orioles' interest in Gallen is concrete, what should we be getting? I don't think just Kobe Mayo should be enough. I think trading away an ace who's definitely not past their prime for just one prospect, I don't think that's going to be enough. So I say we ask for Kobe Mayo, as stated, as a third base, and consider what that might mean if we're acquiring a top third base prospect. But I think we also should be asking for, on their prospect list, Samuel Basallo. He's catcher / first baseman, who's highly rated. He comes in just behind Kobe Mayo on MLB's top 100 prospect list. And then off of the top 100 for the prospect list, there's a guy called Dylan Beavers in the outfield who's got, a favored swing and steal, small ball type, fast hitting attitude that, the Diamondbacks like. Every time we go to the draft, we keep getting, speedy little outfielders, maybe, speedy infielders too, is a good addition that we're going to need to go and get. So in that sense, I think potentially not looking at an outfielder, but Dylan Beavers is an outfielder, has got that right style that we like. And then a guy called I can't read my notes here. I think this is Judd Fabian. That's right, yeah, Judd Fabian, who's also an outfielder, but also looks more of a DH profile as well. And I think get those four guys, and then we'll talk with the Baltimore Orioles, because Zac Gallen is one of our aces, regardless of the arrival of Corbin Burns. Zac Gallen is one of our aces. We're not going to trade him away for one prospect. Or if we do, I am personally going to be leading the pitchforks and torches down at Chase Field myself, because I don't think that's a fair deal whatsoever, just to get one prospect who's not really Major League ready by all accounts in exchange. Yeah, not happening for me. So let's think about this. Who could we be looking for as an option if we're going a different direction? If we're not going to trade away Zac Gallen, we're going to look at the free agent market instead. Obviously, we know that former Diamondbacks DH Randall Grichuk, the righty, is still available and on the market as a free agent. But if we're going to think about spending some more money, making another big splash this offseason, we've already made a kind of shocking big splash that no one saw coming with the acquisition of Corbin Burns. But there's plenty of other ways that the Diamondbacks could be going out there and making a big impact. And if we're thinking really big, let's talk Alex Bregman. Let's talk Alex Bregman. He's a guy who's had a lot of suitors this offseason. Obviously, most people will know who I'm talking about. He's the third baseman, is formerly an Astro. He's a free agent at the moment. In terms of numbers, he's elite level defender, and people are saying that if we acquire him and play him at third, it gives you the option to put Eugenio Suarez at DH. Statistically, Bregman is top 10% on square, whiff, K, and fielding range, according to Baseball Savant, and the basic line on his numbers in 2024, which of course was with the Astros. He hit 260, 26 home runs, 75 RBI, and 151 hits. I think it's unlikely that the Diamondbacks go out and get Alex Bregman. He's not a guy who we desperately need. I think if we're going to acquire somebody, it's going to be acquiring somebody to play DH rather than acquiring somebody to put on a position spot and move that guy in the position to DH. But we've done it before. While Cattell was getting reps at DH last year, you had Perdomo at second, Blaze Alexander at short, just shifting the infield around a little bit. That's always going to be a possibility. But if the Diamondbacks aren't going to be in for Alex Bregman, we're going to have to fight off noted interest from the Astros. We're talking about reacquiring him. I think one of the numbers floated was comparable to the Pete Alonso offer that the Mets have just made. It was, I believe, in the region of $130 million across 3 to 5 years. This year's, perhaps more than we're looking to spend on just one player. We've already dumped, upwards of 180, heading towards 200 million towards the territory of Corbin Burns. And yes, some of that is deferred. So I'm not sure we have that kind of money to be going out. I think if we're going to, my personal preference would be if we're going to spend that kind of money, hang on to it for a little while longer and see about, renewing some contracts at the end of the year, especially with the topic of this episode, Zac Gallen. Personally, I would not be all in on Alec Bregman. Obviously, we're fighting off interest from the Astros and, the Red Sox, with the Red Sox, although they are really still in on Nolan Arenado as well. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be all in on Bregman. I think there is more to gain, as I said, from spreading out that money, spreading out our remaining money. I like the idea of re-signing Randal Grichuk, although, as many people have pointed out, if we do go and do that and consider him not just a DH, but potentially an outfielder as well, it might mean the distant possibility of, a name like Alek Thomas not making the opening day 40-man roster. And when you think about the kind of impact that he's had on the Diamondbacks with, some really big clutch home runs, some outstanding performances, especially against Philly in 2023, he's a guy who's well liked. He's had his own, themed giveaways, T-shirts, etc. at Chase Field. He's got that right profile of balance between power and speed. Between him and Jake McCarthy, you've got a really solid center field rotation. So the fact that we are looking for backup center fielders, I think, is more of an indication of our depth than anything else. Like, if neither those guys are playing, then it's somebody like Jorge Barosa who's playing in center field, who's we've seen some of last year, but I think is still, I think you can probably consider them relatively untested. So yeah, do we need to go and consider getting Randal Grichuk for that spot instead? Although I don't think that's going to be a huge priority when it comes to the Diamondbacks. I think they are looking elsewhere. I think if we were going to get Randal Grichuk, it probably would have happened by now. The fact that he declined Diamondbacks' offer to explore his opportunities in free agency at the end of last year, I think that means that if he was going to come back, he would have come back by now. But maybe we're playing the long game. Maybe we're playing a little bit of Dbacks Hold'em, where we're going to try and see what cards the other guys are getting before we go out and show our hand. Then again, we've already shown quite a lot of our hand throughout most of the winter meetings. We all know that what the Diamondbacks trade priorities are. The main one is get Jordan Montgomery out the door and get the DH in. So I definitely don't think that Zac Gallen is going to be the SP that we are shopping when we go and talk to any other team. I don't think there's a fat chance in heck of that. Everyone's talking about the Diamondbacks starting rotation going into the 2025 season. Obviously Corbin Burns, Zac Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Erod, and then Brandon Pfaadt as the 5-man. And I think the last thing that any sane GM would do is trade one of the aces when you have what could be considered potentially the strongest 5-man in baseball. And yes, I will stand by that claim. I know that the Dodgers are signing every starting pitcher they can get their hands remotely near. I know they're going out and spending absurd money. Yes, I know they got Roki Sasaki. I know Otani's going to pitch this year, etc., etc., etc. I don't see too many other teams that have 5 starting pitchers of that level. Maybe you can make a case for Nelson coming in over Erod. Maybe some people are saying Merrill Kelly might not have quite the same stuff this year after he had his injury last year. I'm a big fan of Merrill Kelly. I've said before, I like his journey. I like going Desert Mountain High School in Phoenix, not getting drafted, going out playing in Korea for a while, then coming back to the Dbacks and making an impact, and especially that big storyline he was having during the 2023 NLCS with having been attending many Phillies games and then the harsh reception he got and overcoming that. I like Merrill Kelly. I think he'll be fine. But yeah, like I said, the last thing any sane GM would do was break that up. And I think regardless of the strength of those guys waiting in the wings, so Nelson, Gilbert Diaz, Yumin Lin, who everyone's expecting those guys to all get some time in the majors in this year, regardless of the fact that that you have that level of starting pitcher prospect, and I think it's not really fair to call Ryan Nelson a prospect anymore. And you have somebody like Tommy Henry as well, who's could always come back to prominence. I think you're still not going to go ahead and say, yeah, you know what, we're gonna get rid of one of our strongest arms, regardless of the quality of your your number 4 and number 5 rotational guys, or the guys who could come in and be a new major league arm. I don't think what we should be doing is trading Zac Gallen, but I'm not going to rule it out. As much as, currently this week, Gamby has come out and he's shut down those rumors. I'm not going to say that we're not going to trade Zac Gallen. I'm not Mike Hazen. I don't know what Mike Hazen's thinking. But if we're going to be making a guess, we have to look at the historical precedent here. Mike Hazen traded away a fan favorite MVP caliber player in Paul Goldschmidt. This is the same GM who did that, and he did that with 1 year remaining on the contract, so rather than losing them to free agency, tried to get some value out of it. Mike Hazen has done this before. It would be the same kind of blow if he were to go and trade Zac Gallen and try and, make the financially savvy, businessy decision over really what I think the majority of the wishes of the fans would be. And I think when it comes to the wishes of the fans, by the way, survey on the AZ Snake Pit, I believe, was 66% of you believes that Zac Gallen either leaves as a free agent or signs an extension, and the will of the fans seems pretty set there. But remember when Zac Gallen arrived from Miami? It was for Jazz Chisholm, so who at the time was the number 1 Diamondbacks prospect and has gone on to play in a World Series, be the face of MLB The Show while he was in Miami. He's now a Yankee now. We have to be aiming for that caliber of player if we do let him go. Mike Hazen, if you're listening, and it's doubtful that you are, but hey, you might enjoy a British baseball takes every once in a while. If you're going to trade Zac Gallen, and listen very closely to me here, you need to be getting some really serious quality. And that's going to be my little segue while I just have my little tea break. So, if Zac Gallen does go, and then also Zac Gallen does go and not to Baltimore, where is he likely to go? Let's look at something more specific than just, the cliched every team is looking for starting pitching. I think if we're doing that, I say we go stock up on pinstripe prospects. I knew when I wrote that in my notes that was going to be a tongue twister and I wouldn't get it right first time, and I was right. So yeah, let's try that again. I say we go stock up on pinstripe prospects from NYC. There we go, got it right. High profile in MLB news this week is that, pitcher Marcus Stroman looks set to leave the Yankees. He's unfollowed them on Instagram, which everyone is losing their minds over. Oh my God, he's unfollowed them. Da, 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 da. It's like high school drama. Somebody unfollows somebody on Instagram. Everyone starts throwing their toys out the pram. But that means that the Yankees need a starting pitcher, and nothing is more of a Yankees trade than going out and getting an ace pitcher from what they would see as a small market team and going and getting a guy who they could very much get excited about. There's plenty of guys with, interesting hair, kind of interesting profile, knuckleballer, curveball type guys going to the Yankees and having success. Look at how prominent Luke Weaver, Diamondbacks legend, was in the Yankees' run to the World Series last year. I think if Zac Gallen went there, he would do very well. But yes, they need starting pitching, and they need it to accompany their newly acquired closer in Devin Williams, who of course the Diamondbacks were briefly in on for a while. And yes, we do still need a closer. But who do we target for Zac Gallen if we're going to say call up the Yankees and say, hey Yankees, sorry about 2001, but not really. We won the World Series, you didn't. Haha, suck it. Anyway, let's talk trades. Who do you get? Zac Gallen, I think, warrants at least 15 BWAR in terms of trade value in return. So, first things first, I say get Yason Dominguez. And yeah, I know that's not really a prospect. He's the number 1 Yankees prospect, but yes, he's projected to be their starting major league left fielder come opening day. And you know that thing I said about not acquiring guys to move the person who's already in that position to the DH spot? Well, I'm going to suggest exactly that. I say we go get Yason Dominguez. We consider him as like center fielder / left fielder. That gives somebody like Lourdes Gurriel the opportunity to potentially fill in that DH spot if we need him there. And I think considering those days, that could be interesting. We all know about Pina Power. We know Lourdes Gurriel has the potential to be one of our stronger power bats. He's not really known for being just a power bat. He's a good contact guy. His defense in the outfield is above average or close to above average, really bordering on that little thing between like the middle of the zone and the kind of upper 50th, 60th percentile, which, it's not amazing. You're not looking at somebody like Corbin Carroll who can run anything down. Lourdes isn't known for his speed. He's not known for, being an insane defender, but he's done some good plays in the past. And I think his record in Toronto was interesting before he arrived as part of that Dalton Varsho trade along with Gabby Moreno. His defensive record in Toronto actually wasn't that bad, and we haven't seen that kind of numbers in defense for him. But I think that's probably the difference between, Toronto and Chase Field in terms of the number of balls that actually get sent up flying out to left field. That doesn't happen nearly as much at Chase Field as it did out there, so I don't think we've seen the best of Lourdes Gurriel Jr.'s defense. But yeah, that would be the first thing. Go get Jasson Dominguez, and I think if there are any Yankees fans listening, yes, I know that's potentially a little bit unrealistic, but at the same time, people are saying, we were going to trade Ketel Marte to Seattle in this offseason. And yeah, not a chance in hell of that happening, so why shouldn't I throw out some interesting trades there? But I'm not just saying, straight one-for-one swap Zac Gallen for Jasson Dominguez. I think the Diamondbacks deserve a little bit of a cherry on top, a little bit of a sweetener there. And in that case, I think we're adding in a request for a guy, and I'll give you his profile first before I give you his name. So if you're thinking above 6'6", 235 pounds, outfielder, mostly center fielder. If that sounds like a mini Aaron Judge to you, especially given the fact this is coming from the Yankees, you'd be about right. And this is a guy called Spencer Jones, who Diamondbacks fans, you may have seen him on MLB top prospect lists. You probably know a little bit about him if you're, a baseball aficionado and you keep an eye on this sort of thing. But yeah, Spencer Jones spent most of the second half of last year in Double-A, had over 200 strikeouts, making him the only Yankees prospect to do so. But he takes big swings, but he was being heavily coached in the latter half of last year by Aaron Judge's personal coaching team. In his last 38 games in Double-A, he hit for an average of 338. And his finishing line for 2024 was 259 average with 125 hits, 78 RBI, 17 homers, and 25 stolen bases, which isn't bad for, a guy who's not really broken out with any specific skill set yet. He has the potential to have, an insane amount of power. He's pretty quick. He's got huge running stride. He really could be a guy who can do it all out there in that outfield. He's affectionately named the Athletic Freak. He's a guy has got big presence and kind of the big aura to go with it. So with a little bit of that strikeout coaching in Reno, which they've done a good job with, doing the same thing, modifying the swings with Jake McCarthy, quite notably in terms of coaching a guy to adjust their swing, focus on what pitches they're going to swing at as well. I think that Spencer Jones could be a great part of that potential acquisition, and also a great fit for Chase Field as opposed to having to play defense in his future at Yankee Stadium. Chase Field will allow him to do a lot more rather than just watching things go over his head by a clear 40 feet. I think, especially given the fact that, if Zac Gallen is going the other way in that trade, there's going to be a lot less homers given up at Yankee Stadium. Then there's going to be much less opportunity for an interesting defensive outfielder to really show their stuff. Obviously, has to compete with a lot of great guys for that center fielder spot. Obviously, Jazz Chisholm is there at the Yankees right now, so I think he could be a very good fit for the Diamondbacks. If we are going down I'm not going to call it the worst case scenario that we trade Zac Gallen. It would be a pretty bad case scenario in terms of popularity and fan opinion. If that does happen, we need to soften that blow. We need to get some significant stuff in. So Jasson Dominguez and Spencer Jones that's my lowest threshold for what I will accept if we are going to trade Zac Gallen. That's what we need to be getting value-wise back in return. But yeah, I think Spencer Jones especially could be a great prospect, very suited to Chase Field. And this is a Chase Field, of course, that the news is breaking early this morning, late last night for me here in the UK. That Chase Field, Friday nights, the roof is going to be open, which is obviously a bit of a fan favorite little ritual that they have, especially with those Arizona sunsets. This isn't something I've seen before. My first game that I attended to go and see the Diamondbacks was in the latter half of 2022. And it was a day game and the roof was closed the whole time. I still have not been to a game at Chase Field when the roof has been open, and I'm super excited to potentially get the opportunity to do that when I'm in Arizona in the early half of June and July this year. So that's going to be pretty cool to see as well. So I'm very glad to hear the good news that, there is starting to be some collaboration between local authorities and the Diamondbacks ownership and front office in getting that happen. It's seeming like good vibes all round right now for Diamondbacks fans. So we'll just have to wait and see with bated breath. I don't know what bated breath is. I'm really getting the tongue twisters in on my notes today. It's less than 30 days until pitchers and catchers report. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that as we're going to break it down. We're also going to be taking a look at, potentially what order the rotation for the Diamondbacks is going to be in the next few episodes. We're hoping to have some pretty cool guests as well. With that, I'm going to wrap up the episode for the day. Thank you very much for listening. You can go ahead and follow the podcast on all platforms. That would be amazing, wherever it is that you're listening/watching, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else that you get to your podcast. We are on every major podcast provider. Please, of course, be sure to follow us at Dbacks Podcast on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. And we are also at Dbacks on TikTok if you want some little fun, short-clipped breakdowns as well. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.